So again, good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all our viewers out there in Cyberland. And hope your day, evening or morning is going really well for you and life is as you wish it to be. So today we have another of our intimate conversation series, and today we've got James Greenshields with us as our guest. So welcome, James.
Thanks for having me, Mandy.
Very welcome. And thank you for saying yes and coming in for a bit of an intimate conversation. And again, who knows where it's going to go? We just let it free flow and see where we go. But yeah, looking forward to it. First of all, though, James, I'll just read your intro and introduce you to those who may not know you. So James is a man with an incredible breadth and depth of experience, from commanding on the battlefield to unifying boardrooms through to helping others find themselves in their own healing journeys. His personal experiences have fueled a zest for life, family and service. In 2016, James, with his wife Kirsty, cemented their work in the creation of a national charity, Emergent Leaders Foundation, which runs everything from Youth Rites of Passage, individual wellbeing courses, through to Organisational Leadership Programs. A strong connection to nature and thirst for knowledge has led him to explore many paths, from ancient mysticism through to modern psychology, and in the process develop a uniquely holistic approach to being of service. This journey has birthed his own paradigm of leadership, Harmonic Leadership. Beautiful. So I would like to go into the Emergent Leaders Foundation and just tell us a little bit more about that and how that works.
It birthed itself in the word emerging and emergent, because in nature we have emergent trees, like our gum tree in Australia is an emergent tree which needs to push up and create a higher canopy, which then draws everything else up so that ecosystems can sit at their natural level. But at the same time, a gum tree will drop a limb when it needs to, and that limb will dissolve back into the earth and provide nutrients for everything else around it. So the time I feel, and Kirsty, my wife as well, feels that we're currently in is a time for a new form of leadership in society, which is very much community orientated but globally networked. We feel that every issue on the planet can be solved at a community level within a global context. Communities know each other best. Well, they used to. The last couple of years has caused a bit of a fraction in that, but it's also it's highlighted the need for it more than ever. And it's also causing it to come together in many different subsets too, which is really cool. Yeah. But it also has to be networked, because we are a global community, and many people with different understandings and capabilities will understand we're not just a global community either. We sit well within a cosmos. So it taps into, Emergent Leaders Foundation taps into all these varying things for a person to actually find themselves once they've been lost, or an organization to realize there's a different way of actually harmonically leading, that we don't actually have to compete against each other. We can compete with, so that everyone flourishes in a harmonic form. If we just look at nature, and nature's our best leader, full stop, in my humble opinion. I live in nature, but I spend so much time in it, and I learn so much from it. So from our youth emerging into society, through to people emerging out of, say, an unconscious state of living, to really exercise their full amount of being. That's what Emergent Leaders Foundation really assists people and organizations do.
Beautiful. And that is, like you say, highlighted today. I mean, just been saying over the last, I don't know how long, we need community back. It's just fractured everywhere. And the children, the youth today are just, they're lost. They just don't know where to go, what to do. And I feel they are also seeing, of course, that a world that's sort of breaking down around them, and where is their future? You know, where are they to go, and where do they head? And I don't know that there's much going on in respect to showing them, actually, you know, in the sense of groups or organisations, or doesn't seem to be around here anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's a big point. If like our children are lost, what does that mean about the adults?
Yeah.
Because our children are simply a reflection of the adults. And so adults are walking around in this malaise, this unconscious stupor, just engrossed in stories which realistically don't serve. They actually divide, and in that division, it actually destroys. But at the same time, you know, there's incredible light happening, because remember, the darkness can only be as dark as the light is light. And it takes one to be with the other in this type of reality. So, you know, the stronger a superhero gets, the stronger the arch villain.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I witness it on a daily basis. I've got, you know, a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter, two amazing women who teach and lead me every day. And you know, I was working with my oldest yesterday, and like my gratitude last night was to the incredible understanding she has about life herself, her courage to actually choose to heal wounds that, you know, she didn't have to choose, her insight, her ability to observe, and I'm not proud of her, because pride is actually about attachment and claiming ownership over.
Yes.
I'm just in awe of her. And it's, you know, I've every day I go on the footy paddock to try and be the best version of a father I can be.
Yeah.
And some days I've been really, really bad, like really bad, especially my early days after, you know, I was in the military with post-traumatic stress, etc. But the thing is, like, as a guy I was working with the other day said, because he's got young kids, he goes, I'm infecting my kids. And I said, yeah, I understand you are right now. But the other thing you're doing is you're choosing to heal, which will allow you to create something into the future. So not all is lost. And I'm a living proof of that. Like, my relationship with my daughters is, I can't understand it, because I never had a comparison of it. So each one of us in our relationship are forging something new and dynamic every day. I think there's a lot of light out there too.
Yes, absolutely, James, there is. And I know, you know, over the years I've been on Facebook with you, you know, we might not have met in person or even had chats at all, but I've read your posts and they're very deeply raw. You know, you've had some very, you know, intimate journeys that you've shared with us. And, you know, that for me, in a time like earlier on, before all this stuff hit the fan, you were journeying through a lot of shifts. And for me, I was in such awe of you too, I suppose, in the sense that here was this male, you know, because there weren't a lot of men that were doing this journey of self-discovery and healing wounds and, you know, walking that talk. You were here doing that, and I was reading your posts, and I was just, there were times I cried. It was like, wow, this man is really getting in there and grinding it all down and, you know, coming through this stuff. And I just thought that you were, to me, there was this great leader coming through in you that was going to lead other men through this masculine journey of releasing themselves into this more feminine space, really, and allowing that balance to come in. So, you know, thank you for the leadership that you're showing in that for other men, because I'm sure they gravitate towards you as well. And like with this leadership thing, I mean, absolutely great.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, very raw. And I just, you know, admire that strength, because it takes courage for us to look into that shadow part of ourselves and all the story and the wounding, and takes a lot of courage. And sometimes, sorry, I was just going to say, sometimes we don't really get a choice. It's just happening, doesn't it? It happens like all of a sudden, bam, we're in there, and it's like, what? Yeah.
I suppose, yeah, my choice was either leave the planet by my own hand or to go deep. And, you know, I realized that I hadn't exhausted all options. I hadn't done everything I possibly could do.
Yeah.
And I was in that stage, and lots of people ask, when you're suicidal, you're selfish, and lots of people in their grieving process of someone who's taken their own life, so that was a really selfish act. And that person's never actually been in where the suicidal person is. Matter of fact, what I actually thought was the most selfless thing I could do, because I was just bringing too much pain to everyone I loved. And yet, they wouldn't say that. They would run around, and I remember distinctly when I sat on the couch that day back in 2010, and Kirsty just walked out of the living room out onto this deck. We were in 10 acres of just beautiful bushland. We had this amazing little 3-bedroom house where we just, as a family, we really connected and loved. It was our first house out of the military. For crying out loud, I was, every second weekend flying out to lead a 3-day personal development workshop around Australia somewhere. And so I had 2 amazing daughters. Everything was supposedly rosy. I was ticking all the boxes. But that day I sat on the couch and I watched everyone run outside. And I was just judging myself as completely inadequate, not enough for them, not good enough for them. And everything I do just brings them pain. And I was just really judging myself so deeply and heavily. At that stage, getting out of the military, when I was in the military, I was a major, so an officer, so a middle ranking major, a middle ranking officer. It's about to be promoted to a thing called lieutenant colonel. So I was starting to really get into the deeper, more operational, strategic level leadership at the military, and I could lead 6 multi-million-dollar things at once. Get out on my own, and I'm struggling to tie my shoelaces, make ham and cheese toasties for the girls to take to school, and I can't even scratch my butt. It's like everything was falling apart for me. I just felt like I couldn't do anything, and all my measures of success were external. Yeah. And so those measures of success, when I'm looking at them, they're over here and they're mine, whereas my daughters and Kirsty's success criteria for me were over here, and they were all internal. Who I am, not what I'm doing. Yes. Am I just showing up for the day? Am I simply being dad? Do I have an open heart? Do I have an open ear? That's what they wanted from me. They didn't want the general, but I thought they needed the general. I thought they needed the massive tactician who could, do this, that, and the other at the wave of my fingers, which I was really good at in the military. Yeah. But take that culture and all the energy associated with it, and then remove me from that. Who am I? Yes. And I'd never asked that question. And so I'm sitting on the couch, basically not understanding the questions that I should be asking, judging myself on everything external. And just, judgment was the resultant of guilt and shame. Yeah. So that's where it was. To come to a place now where, my measures of success are my own. I don't mind if someone judges me, because it's about them, not about me. Absolutely. And it's cool. Like, I've got compassion if you judge me, it's fine. And if you want to actually do that, that's cool. If you even want a conversation about it, I can help you understand why you're judging me. You might get something from it. Yeah. So, the level of compassion that I've been able to come into myself is to realize my value is not in my doing, it's in my being. And I know that in society is a real antithesis to what we're the inference and the narrative of a society. Yeah. But it's true. And anyone who's in a loving relationship will attest to that. Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think today, like when I look at, and I was just having a conversation with a young girl yesterday, and asking her around if she had any idea around the anxiety that wave of and generation have, massive anxieties, social anxieties, all the thing. And for me, I've always, it took me a bit, but it was like, I feel like what they're doing and why they have that is that they weren't actually supposed to be in the world that we're trying to unplug from. And that they were held back from being involved in that so deeply as we were by that anxiety, stopped them from doing a lot, and even sometimes working in that world. Just for some to get a job, say as a shop assistant, they were
so in such anxiety around making a mistake at the till, you know, with cash and money and serving people, that it just stopped them from going. So there was I was seeing how this generation were just sort of in a waiting game, really. And now I see that so more clearly why they weren't supposed to be in that world, and that they're gearing themselves up. They haven't come into their purpose here yet, I don't feel. It's still sitting where they're riding this wave, and they'll be taken through. But in that too, I feel that because they, you know, they're going to do things so totally different to how we've done it and how we've been programmed to be in that, like you say, you know. So yeah, these young ones, I get blown away as well. I'm in awe of my youngest daughter, I've got 17 years between my two girls. So the first one came in with all my stuff, you know, and rode that with me. And the second one came in once I'd cleared a lot of it. And she has just this way of taking life and not taking it on. You know, I might get upset about, Mum, why? You know, she has a totally different, just cut and dried. And I go, oh, okay, yeah, of course. I don't have to go there. You know, it's great. They're pretty magical.
Well, you mentioned purpose. Like, I once got asked to go bush with a young man and his dad. And it was asked by his dad because he said, my son's just going around in circles. So anyway, we go bush. 20 minutes, I asked the son 3 questions. He's nailed it. He understands life. 3 hours later, I'm still with the dad.
Yes.
So, and that lasted through the night and into the next day. But the point is, I just asked a couple of questions of the young man, and he really quickly worked out he's misunderstanding purpose. A teenager needs to externalize. It's actually a fundamental psychological and emotional and spiritual developmental cycle. They come out of being a young one and into teenage years, and they need to externalize. They need to experience society and social judgment, social justice. They need to experience all that because it's external to them.
Yes.
But the wise ones were the First Nation people who they put a full stop in adolescence really quickly with the rite of passage. Now, we don't have rites of passage or anything like that anymore in its traditional sense and in its purest sense. We have false initiations, many of them. I was initiated into the military falsely, because a false initiation is one that does not assist you help find yourself. A true initiation assists you find yourself and your place within the tribe.
Yeah.
So the point about that is that this young man, he was just confused because everyone's demanding stuff. He was, I think he was in year 11 at the time. And so everyone's demanding he knows where he goes. He's getting careers advisors giving him this. He's getting careers days. And he's just sitting there going, none of this, I don't care about anything of this.
Yeah.
I said, well, you're missing the point, aren't you? And he said, okay, so what's the question? I said, so if you were to know, what is the most important task you've got right now? And he says, well, to find out who I am. So what's your purpose in this moment? Exactly that, to find out who I am. Exactly. So the teenagers, they must project into the external, and then the full stop in teenage years is when the mirror gets turned up and they can actually turn around and see it inside themselves. And that level of maturity shift that you can see in some amazing teenagers, where all of a sudden you see them take ownership. You see them take the sense of direction, and self-purpose comes in. And not all of them get this because they haven't experienced it or witnessed it through their parents or their teachers or you know, are in their environment. But you can tell distinctly when a teenager shifts their maturity level, because that's what happens. They turn the mirror around and they stop projecting into the world, and they say, right, time for me to step out into the world as who I am.
Yes. Yeah.
It's something, mind you, you know, there's a lot of boys who die at the age of 80. And
true. It took me a minute. Yeah. Yes.
It's like maturity is not a factor of age.
No, it isn't.
In all the youth work I've done, one of the biggest things they're running around and screaming for is morons, not adults. And if you think about that, that's fascinating call to action. There's an amazing guy, Stephen Jenkinson, a Canadian they called him the grief walker, and he did a beautiful documentary. He was a palliative care doctor for quite some time. He called it for doctor industry. He wrote a book, Elders in the Elderless Society, and it's elderhood, I think, in the Elderless Society. It's on my bookshelf somewhere, and it's an amazing. It's called Come of Age. That's what the book's called, and it's all about how to be an elder in a society that's actually vacant of elders. And
Yes.
it's a really important thing. I look at myself, I feel very young, like I haven't hit 50. I forget age doesn't matter for me. There's an old ode in the military, age shall not weary them, and it doesn't. I don't have to die for that to occur for me now. Well, actually, I've had a whole series of deaths if you actually want to go there, but the point is that, like, I've had to realize a transition in my life that's occurred, and I've actually stepping into elderhood quite regularly in forums where previously I would think I was the chief, the leader, one of the alphas, etc. Which I can do like at a drop of a hat. But there's so much more of a nuance and a refined art to being an elder. And the other thing is, it's an honor, because an elder is not self-appointed. No. An elder is by appointment of the tribe. And the tribe knows its need and therefore selects the elder. So, there's, without us having that ability to mature inside ourselves as adults, then we miss a critical function, and we just get shipped off to a nursing home and get dementia and die of some, nebulous thing. Absolutely.
And that there is really, like, this is such a critical point in time, isn't it? This time now. It really is. And I just, there's times when I think, God, I don't even know where this is going. And there's other times I can see these little parts there that I think, yes, that's where it's going to head, and it just all gets mucked up again. And then you sort of, you just sort of, I don't know, I can feel like for myself, knowing who I am has made it a lot easier for me to navigate my way through this. But for those who don't know who they are, those who haven't come into that elder state and they're still floundering around, a lot of adults, it's a scary world for them. And they have no clue what to do, where to go, what it even is all about, really. And that's huge. There's a lot of them.
There is, and that's why mentors are really, really important.
They are.
But there's a couple of rules with mentors. Firstly, understand that a mentor is for a period of time. And a mentor is also going through their own journey. They're not a coach, because a coach sits on the sidelines. A mentor, is in the work that I do. Like, I work with a lot of people. I don't have clients. Look at the etymology or the genesis of the word client. It's all about an umbilical cord.
Yes.
And I refuse to establish an umbilical cord with people. So it's a disempowering function. The point is to help a person realize their own essence inside. Go back to that question, who am I? If you answer that question, firstly, your first answer will never be the same as your second, nor any other answer you go with that one question. It's the biggest question I've asked in my life, and it's the one I keep asking. And I always get a deeper or more rounded answer, but I will never completely get the full answer, because my human consciousness only allows me to get a certain aspect of what the reality is. But that's said, if I go back to being a young person, like, I grew up in a farming community, dad being an Anglican priest, a farmer, never left the land, but he was a chaplain to the army, police, country fire authority. Mum was a school teacher at the local Catholic college, where she was for 36 years. It was a small country town in central Victoria, with a heavy military influence, because our property bounded the southern boundary of the Puckapunnu military training area. So I saw a lot of distinguished people, distinguished farmers, distinguished bishops, archbishops. I met principals on a regular basis, Catholic nuns. Like, one of the most amazing women that I know is this incredibly small Catholic nun that one day just wanted to have a chat to me after I had post-traumatic stress, and she just wanted to talk with me, and we were just talking. She was in her she was breaching her 80s, I think, by this stage. And she said, "Have you got angry at God yet?" Sorry? She says, "Have you got angry at God? You know it's okay to get angry at God, don't you?"
Oh.
And it was the most beautiful. And she was so wise. Like, she wrote theses on Martin Buber and many different, philosophical strains. She was a very, very eclectically wise woman.
Yeah.
So I had all these influences in my life. And then I joined the military and I let go of them and I go for people that are just above me in rank, because that's where I wanted to get to.
Yeah.
The issue was they're on the second and third wife. They were married to the military. A lot of them were extremely arrogant boys. But because they had what I thought I was meant to get, I pulled them in as my mentors. Be very careful of the mentors you choose, because that was the road I was traveling down. And Kirsty didn't want me to be married to the military. She wanted me to be married to her. And I realized that I actually liked my wife. And I didn't want to have to go through that whole trials and tribulations of getting a second or third one, because she picked me up in the first place. So, letting go of those people and realizing it's not about them. And I'm not judging them. I'm just realizing they're not aligned with where I want to go.
Yes.
So when you choose a mentor, be very discerning.
Yeah.
And you'll have mentors for different areas of your life. But at the same time, remember, you don't compartmentalize life. So that mentor still must be and have knowledge and wisdom which can permeate all through your life. Otherwise, you become compartmentalized, fractured, and that's a schism in your psyche and a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And obviously no growth. You're just stagnating and round and round and round, eh? Not fun. So James, in the sense of the military, like, did you ever really, like, you loved it, obviously? How long were you in there? There were quite
17 years all up.
Yeah. So, and like in that sense now, I don't know quite what I want to ask. I know what I'm trying to get to. In the sense of the structure of it, and I mean, it's very rigid, very. How did that affect you? Like obviously now you're out of it, and even before you went into it, there was that freedom that you had. Then you go and put yourself into that very rigid space, which is very masculine, eh? It's like real masculine space. How did you manage to be there? I mean, you would have been still waking or coming more to know self, I suppose, eh? Like, was there an internal battle at all? Do you know what I'm trying to say? I don't know if I've said that.
Yeah, totally. It was a necessary internal battle. So there's a picture on my wall, on my mum's wall, of me at the age of 4 with these armoured personnel carriers coming in our back shearing shed paddock and all parking up because they were just about to do manoeuvres on our property, because we had quite a large property, and Puckapunnu used to get pretty crowded back in those days. And that organisation was B Squadron 2nd Cavalry Regiment. The next photo is me leading B Squadron 2nd Cavalry Regiment to Iraq 30 years later for its first wartime deployment. So I was destined to do what I did. I was destined to be in the land of Ur, under the shadow of the ziggurat of Ur, 6,500-year-old temple to the moon god, where Moses supposedly brought the Ark of the Covenant. I was destined to be in these places where there's an intense energy, and it is. You just look at the Arabs; they're intense people, but also, for people that look simple, they're incredibly complex. And I realized we're quite a simple people who appear incredibly complex. It was a really fascinating time. Like when I was hit by the roadside bomb, it was in the shadow of the ziggurat of Ur. If you believe in anything multidimensional, I know a portal opened up at that moment in time as well, which caused a whole new level of awakening to me, which is why I live in nature now. So it was quite fascinating. And if you believe in luck and all that stuff, well, I'm here to suggest to you, luck is just Well, Deepak Chopra says it nicely. Luck is opportunity and preparedness come together. But for me, luck is simply the law of correspondence, or the law of cause and effect not understood, which is, people that say chance, they believe in chance. Chance is simply an non-acknowledged law, or you haven't understood why things occur. So why do I believe in that now? Because 23rd of April 2007, 6:10 p.m. in local Iraqi time, Abby wakes up screaming 12,000 kilometers away in her bedroom. Why? The bomb detonated upon me. She was with me.
Yeah.
And she enabled the connection between her and Kirsty in that moment to be with me in that soul choice. Do I leave the planet or do I come back? Now, intriguingly enough, 12 months to the day, I didn't think I'd be able to have kids after that, what went on in Iraq, because just stuff went through my body. So, I'm prepared Kirsty for it. It was actually in Auckland, of all places. We're walking back from the harbour up, and it was on my mid-tour leave, which I took very, very late in the tour. And Kirsty and I were just coming back in relationship, because realistically, when I deployed, we were on a one-way street to divorce. We were two emotionally caged beings cohabitating, annoying the crap out of each other and servicing each other at the same time. But I woke up in Iraq, and I needed Iraq to help wake me up. And then when I saw her, it was like instantaneous. This is where we're meant to be. And Kirsty knew it in her soul too. I'm meant to be with this man. And Abby just launched. Abby was only 16 months old then. She launched out of Kirsty's arms and didn't leave my arms for 24 hours. And so, we weren't expecting to be talking children and stuff like that into the future, because we didn't even know we had a future. Well, we're walking back up from dinner down at the harbour in Auckland, and Kirsty goes, I'd like to make love with you tonight. And I'm like, 5.5 months in a bloody war zone, and I go, hey. And there's a 7-Eleven there. I said, we're going to the 7-Eleven. And she goes, no, don't worry about that. Would you be interested in another child? And I'm like, now I'm almost on my ass in the pavement. I'm going, wow, this is a lot to take in, comprehend. Yes, simple. And that's when I had to explain, listen, I might not be able to have a child. I might not be able to gift you another child because of what's happened to me. 12 months to the day, 22nd of April 2008, Penelope Jane Greenshields comes into the world. Now, when she was 5, and she wasn't around when I was hit by the bomb, supposedly, but when she was 5, I was transfixed by a video hits, like the music videos.
Yeah.
There was this song called Say Something with Christina Aguilera, and I think it's Good Morning America or something. Yep. Yeah. And it's from that movie If I Stay, which is the movie that actually got Abby to start playing cello. A cellist loses a family in a car accident, and this negress nurse bends down and says, because this girl's in a coma, and she says, if you go or if you stay, it doesn't matter. You just got to make a choice. And like, I'm transfixed. This music has got me, the imagery's got me, and I'm literally, I don't even realize it, but I'm back in Iraq, and I'm back at the bomb site.
Yeah.
And anyway, the music finishes, and I'm like, tears are coming down, and this is 2014, so I've released post-traumatic stress and depression, and I don't need that anymore. But I'm there, I'm back, and I'm learning something else from that part. And Penny's 5, and she's just standing there. I didn't even see her, and she's this beautiful 5-year-old, blonde hair, blue eyes, like long blonde hair, and she just looks up at me and goes, Dad, I'm so glad you listened to me. And I said, yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, I love listening to you. She says, no, when you were hit by the bomb. And I'm trying to compute because I'm just coming back into my conscious room. I said, gorgeous, you weren't around when I was hit by the bomb. She says, yeah, no, your soul. I talked to your soul, and I said, you need to go back inside your body so I can come into the world. She's 5.
Wow, James.
That stuff doesn't just come out of the ether. So I don't believe in coincidence. You look at the etymology of the word coincidence, it means coincide, coming together of 2 points anyway, under mathematical terminology. So there's so much at play, interplay in our lives that we don't realize. And if I have a bad day, which I don't really anymore, but if I have a bad day, which is so much better than my good days used to be anyway, but if I have a day, and that's cool because that's the law of rhythm. So I'm down in a trough, and I need to settle. I need to slow down. I need to go inside. I need to internalize. I need to allow the flow to come in so that any muck that the residue can flow back out, be flushed out.
Yeah.
If I'm in a flat day, then I start to realize that, dude, you're not seeing the bigger picture. Just allow yourself to stop and say, in this moment, if I'm being challenged by something, then in this moment, what is the universe's biggest calling for me? What is the universe's grandest intention in this moment for me? And I always come back to 3 questions. Where am I? Where do I want to go? And what's my next step? And I've realized, as human beings, we have an incredible tendency to complicate things.
We do.
And there's a massive difference between complication and complexity. Life is complex. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
And what I've realized looking at life is that I originally thought life was pretty simple. But then I started to look deeper and I thought, hold on a minute. That's a bit of a rash judgment there, James. How about you stop and look? And I started to see the complexity, the layers. But the more I immersed myself into the layers, the more patterns started to emerge. And then simplicity birthed. And that's true simplicity. Einstein said, a genius is someone who can explain the grandest terms to a layperson.
Yeah.
And that's because they see through the complexity to the simplicity.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, there's so much in when we're in those flat periods that they're actually the times of most growth, not up here.
Yeah.
That's not where the most growth is. Down here is where the most growth is.
Exactly. And, trying to, not even trying, but, offering space, I suppose, for people to come through to those places is sometimes, you see the fear in people not wanting to actually go into those places. They're afraid to go to that place, which, we know, like you say, is where all the beauty is. Really, it's the precious gifts that you find in there. But it is being honest with self too, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Being really honest, and that can be a bit of a shock sometimes. Gosh,
I call it radical ownership.
Yeah,
it's like own everything, own that thought, own that feeling, own those words that you said, own that deed that you just gave. We control 3 things in life: our thoughts, our words, our deeds. And we don't control anyone else's. Stop trying to control everyone else's. That's a need in you that causes addiction, it causes pain, it causes friction, tension. So the massive shift is to come back inside and to go, right, I own 3 things: my thoughts, my words, my deeds. How do I master them? Because most of us aren't masters in them.
no.
The amount of thoughts that take us away from what we truly want on a daily basis are huge. It's said by psychologists that we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Well, what percentage of that thought process is going towards what you want compared to taking you away from what you want on a daily basis? So, the old adage, American Indian adage, of which wolf do you feed? It's the same thing. So, it just goes to say there's nothing new under the sun, by the way. It's just it's different things wrapped up in different contexts, which is cool. But in those moments it's asking you, it's calling you to find out what you're made of. And that question, who am I, it's so pivotal. Like, I work a lot with high performance athletes transitioning from their particular code and out and sporting thing and going out. The ones that make it best are those that don't label themselves with the jersey or the implement, the paddock, that they play on, or the game that they play. They identify themselves deeper. They might not know exactly what, but they know there's something deeper in there. They know their life does not just have to revolve around playing footy, for instance, etc. They've got bigger things to give. Now, interestingly enough, go back to the point about testosterone-filled cultures. Well, professional sport more often than not is a testosterone-filled culture.
Yeah.
Even if you look at the advent of women's AFL, rugby league, etc. I'm not too sure if rugby union is going down that way as well, but it's a very actually testosterone-filled environment.
Yes.
And it makes for an interesting mix. And the advent of UFC and women going into UFC and stuff like that, well, that's actually more often than not a complete violation of your own femininity. It's my humble opinion in that. But they go for it for a reason. Everyone does things for a reason. If they need to go into that field to find themselves, then go into that field to find it.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, unfortunately, in many fields that people go into, there's not go back to the elder and the mentor. There's not the elder and the mentor which actually help you find yourself.
Yeah.
More often than not, especially in high performance stuff, there is often mentors who will attempt to use you and what you have for the betterment of them or for the organization, administration, the code, etc. So, excuse me, I'm going next week to the NRL transition workshop, and we'll run the guys and the ladies, because it's beautiful. They're getting the women in as well, and their partners. So they're all, going through this transition phase, or have been for the last couple of years, some of them. And so we'll help them understand that their identity is not the code. They might go back and work with the code, but that's not who they are. And that's the biggest thing for them to move out of. But at the same time, go back to this point about masculine culture. Masculine cultures provide direction. That's the aspect of masculinity. It's direction setting. Why I struggled when I got out is because I couldn't find my own direction, couldn't set my own direction. It was set for me all the time.
Yes.
So that rigidity, it just prolonged the pain.
Yeah.
But I got so much out of the 17 years. Like I don't actually regret a single day of my life. And not even the worst days of my life, I don't regret, because I know each one of them was a building block to who I am now. But at the same time, like Kirsty only spent 9 years, I think, in the military. She got her lessons in 9. I took 17, so almost twice as long. But each to their own. So, but the point is, there was so much richness in that environment for me to learn. And it's not only that I'm actually a bit flippant and degrading of myself. I'm going to own myself right now. So I actually degraded myself in that comment. Even though I was being humorous, I still degraded myself. I actually remained 17 years in the military because I had the capability to immerse myself in such an environment and actually be really, really competent, but at the same time, be able to hold energy to a higher level so that I can and still do now, could and can and do now, draw out so much more interrelatability, lessons, etc. from that environment. Like I can go into testosterone-filled environments and not worry, but I don't lose myself in them.
No.
And I can cry. Matter of fact, I make it a point generally to tell a story which I know is going to get tears flowing through my eyes, so that I can crack open those souls that are ready to crack open in those environments, because they need to feel again,
Absolutely.
So,
and I think now, today in particular, there's been so much, like, we're just bombarded with so much information and so much stuff that's, we call it the crazy chaos, and perfect chaos that we're all in. Excuse me. But it's like there's just so much bombarding us that it's like I say before, people just don't know what to do with that and how to navigate themselves through. And by actually setting, like you say, those directions and boundaries, even, because today I just see no boundaries. People don't know how to set boundaries even for themselves. It's just allowing everything to happen, basically. And
well, here's the kicker, you see, because in essence, boundaries aren't necessary.
Yeah.
But there's a massive but to what I just said.
Yeah.
They're a necessary step towards a place. So one needs in our growth to understand boundaries intimately and use them and have them in our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual.
Yes.
And we need that. Abby was my oldest. Like, both daughters are really quite extrasensory adept. So she had an issue one day where she knew there was a man in the room, and freaked her out big time. So like my role is to come in and immediately I'll throw my energy, like he will get the out of the room.
Yep.
And so I'll do that. But at the same time, then what I do is I'll soften my strength. So I've cleared the space. Now I'm holding space, and I'll soften my strength because she now needs to own the space. So went through this releasing fear, as you say. We went into the fear, deep into the fear, into the wound, etc. And then she brought him back in. Now I felt him, and I realized he was just scared, and he actually wanted to be in the room because the energy in the room. And so Abby was able to say, okay, I acknowledge that and send him love, but at the same time say, this is my space.
Yes.
So it needs to be sacred. And that then occurred, and she again felt safe within the room.
Beautiful.
So, you know, they're really necessary, especially for young people.
Absolutely.
But as you say, like so many people don't have them, and so young people don't even know what they are.
Yes.
Because we've gone in this reactionary situation to the baby boomers who were all about blah, 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 blah. And so we've pushed away from that, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, not realizing there was a half truth into what they were actually saying.
Yes.
And so, you know, bring back the essence of what they're saying, not the dogma, so that we can understand it. Now, once you understand it and you sit, then I realize, go back to what I teach the young ones, actually teach everyone because everyone needs to know this, but young ones particularly, it's all about respect. And my first question to young people, you know, in the Young Warrior Youth Leadership Program, the first day I'll ask, so if I'm not respecting someone, who am I not really respecting? Now, in a nanosecond, they turn around and say, me.
Yeah.
But what happens in 30 years when, you know, the 40-year-old's forgotten that one statement? Well, they just go, what a stupid question. Well, the thing is, then by day 2, we flip it and we say, for me to respect myself, I must. Because then it's about personal ownership in the language. So I must. So come back to respect. But the kicker about respect is no one can disrespect me unless I allow them to.
Yes.
Because if they're conducting a word or a deed against me, even a thought, word, or deed against me in some negative intention, who's that about, me or them? And when I realize that, it's like I can now look at you and realize there's some really harsh words that you're speaking right now.
Yeah.
And I can be in compassion towards you. I don't need to be angry at you for slandering me or saying this, that, and the other. If I am angry at you, it means there's some truth to what you're saying. Because you've triggered me, and that means that I have the wound here. So therefore I have to do some work inside myself.
Yeah.
And and I might need the boundary then to actually give myself a bit of space protection so that I can go into the healing space, or need someone to come and provide the boundary for me. And this is the dance of the masculine and the feminine. And that woman could hold the masculine space while the man goes into his feminine and does the healing. Or the man comes and provides that safe space for the woman to go into the space to healing. Mind you, it needs to happen anyway for creation, because it's what creation is all about. So that container, that womb, needs to be held, and it doesn't have to. This is where men misunderstand the protector. They get on, I've got to protect my clan, I've got to do this, and we drop our voice a whole octave so that I sound even more masculine. It's misunderstanding the concept. It's not protector, it's the space holder.
Yes.
And I can hold space on a telephone call, I can hold space on a Zoom call, I can hold space physically.
Yeah.
When I understand space holding, I become an incredibly useful individual.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And I was going to say, we learn to, because I didn't have boundaries set for myself. I wasn't sure where my boundaries were. And I learnt them, you know, of course you do, with whatever abuse might come forward from not setting a boundary, then you start putting them in, you know, and knowing how deep you might need to trench them in too with certain ones. But what happens from that is you actually, like you're saying, you do become the space holder, and that space holding now is for you as well. And it's not that you have to put the boundaries in, they're already set, and people just tend to know where that is. And there isn't having to reinforce them again or again and again. It just is. You are the space that is that now. But one of the biggest things, I think, and probably the saddest for me over these last many years, not just these last couple, but these many years, is seeing the total disrespect for the privilege of life. Because I feel like it is a privilege. I feel like we're just such a privilege to be here in these bodies, breathing this air and actually being in this experience of being in these bodies and breathing this air and walking this planet and with everyone else that's here. And this seeing and witnessing such total disrespect for life in general, whether it be their own life or somebody else's, or in particular animals' lives, and the planet's life and just life in general. And I think in time now, I don't know. I don't know whether that's changing a lot at all, to be honest, at this moment in time.
Well, the thing we teach is the trilogy of three. And I've mentioned the first aspect of the trilogy of three being we control three things: our thoughts, our words, our deeds. Well, the next step here is all action must be taken with respect, reverence, and responsibility. Respect another. I talked about respect. Reverence, bring the sacredness back, the sanctity back of life, of everything, of relationship, of everything. And responsibility, own your part in and radical ownership. I've talked about that before, but don't own someone else's, because you can't heal someone else's pain. And there's a misnomer in the healing culture that, go in and heal the other person's, but if you do that, more often than not, what actually happens is large-scale regression in that individual, because the platform and the framework haven't been organically created. But secondly, you can actually build resentment in the individual, because they miss out on the lesson that pain was actually bringing. Now, so there's this understanding of responsibility. It's such a deep topic. So respect, reverence, and responsibility. All actions must be done in those. Now, the outcome must be a win for you, a win for me, and a win for the divine. And if I think that way, then, all of a sudden I start to think harmonically, and I start to use empathy and not go into sympathy. Now, a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of empaths get caught in the sympathetic loop, where they take on the emotion of another person, and they will often gain weight, they'll have illness, and they'll feel tired, lethargic constantly. It's because you're taking on that energy, which is not yours to take on. One empathizes by understanding and being aware, by tuning in to how another person's feeling, but not taking it on themselves. Because if they're angry, they don't need another angry person. They don't need to just to go, that person's an idiot, get into them, blah, blah, blah. That's not being empathetic. That's actually inciting something. So, there's this real balance that has to happen. And sometimes a win for them is not what you would necessarily initially think, because sometimes the person has to actually go through hardship to grow. It's like I keep telling people, allow your children to plow in. Stop helicopter parenting them, hovering over the top of them, making sure that they've, done everything, this, that, and the other, because they don't learn how to do it themselves. I had this conversation with my daughters just the other day about, the fact that I didn't even really know how to cook when I was 24 years of age. I had to ring the property manager, who was a really lovely lady, and she got on like a house on fire with us. I think she was just more amused and pitying us as two 24-year-olds in this house. And I said, I've got these people coming around. I'm trying to cook this roast dinner with the oven, but I don't know how to start the oven. And she's gone, well, is it gas or is it electric? And I said, how do I tell? And it was just, she was hilarious, and she found it hilarious. And when she got me going, I got the oven going. I made a cracker of a roast. And it was awesome because I was just trying to remember what Mum did. And Mum did all the cooking. It was amazing. You always had a wood fire going. What was a wood stove going? What was my job at the property was to chop wood, and make sure the wood box was stocked and the fire was always going. Well, I was really good at that, but I didn't know how to cook. So, the girls, we make sure that they understand that, the composting toilet we have there has to actually be maintained. It's a beautiful piece of nature, but at the same time, it has to be maintained. I'll teach you how to change a tire. Like, this is where the oil is. This is if you want to drive. Actually, the first lesson about driving was emotional. It was sit in the driver's seat and actually be in the driver's seat. Most accidents occur because people aren't in the driver's seat.
No. Yeah.
So if you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're not in the driver's seat, stop. Bring yourself in ground and then start to drive. That was their first lesson.
Yeah.
And
good.
They need to know mechanically. So all that hard, supposedly masculine stuff, left brain stuff, they need to know that though.
Yeah.
Because when Abby's going to be traveling around in a camper van that she's having a look at the moment, she's out west of Wilcannia where there ain't much to help you out. She needs to know what to do.
Yes.
And I'm really confident she can now because I don't have to. I've allowed her to plow in enough that she, in her relationship with her boyfriend, plow in and then come out and there's an open circle and let's talk. Where are you? Where do you need to go? What's your next step?
Yeah. Beautiful. That's beautiful. And how, I want to say lucky are your children to have birthed in and, brought you guys through that process too, because today it is these children that they're birthing in to get us to step up to the plate more and more. And
the thing to remember, Mandy, is like we've touched on it a couple of times about the darkness in the world. The warrior, many people, especially in the men's movement, are getting into the warrior and everything. It's the wrong archetype to get into. It's the easiest archetype to enter through. Cool. The real archetype to get into, if you're touching the warrior and you're not touching your lover, you're going to have an imbalance. You need to touch both because the warrior only plays because of what the lover fuels. If the warrior doesn't have connection to the lover, he becomes macabre, callous, rigid, destructive. So, but the real one to get into is your magician. After you've got into your king. Your king's obviously your most important, but the dark feminine is actually the biggest thing at play out there in society at the moment. And I know people would say that's very politically incorrect to talk about. I don't deal in that circle. It's just have to go into truths. And the dark feminine is at play, bewitching people, and bewitching men and disempowering men constantly. And because they disempower men, they're also disempowering women. Yeah. So sure, I don't profess to be in the men's movement or do men's work. I just work with a lot of men. But my actual purpose on the planet is to be of service to the feminine. And my purpose at the moment, whilst I work with both men and women, my purpose at the moment is very heavily assisting men actually own their stuff so that they can actually be a better cohabitator around women, etc., and help them flourish into the creative space. And the other thing is in leadership, if you haven't touched into your feminine side, then you're missing the key aspects of leadership, which allow for the whole brain interaction, the left and the right unifying to the whole brain. So this magician is really, really fascinating. And there is a lot of darkness out there. But the thing is, there's a misunderstanding between what darkness is. Darkness is not evil.
No.
It does not equate to evil. There is evil in the world. To think that there's not is to not see what's actually going on, but to judge it is another thing.
Exactly.
If you judge evil, then what you're doing is you're actually perpetuating evil even more and you're being ensnared by it. To witness it, it's completely different. So there is so much beauty in the world. Go back to what you said about sanctity of nature, like the planet. Global warming is not an issue. It's a symptom. And matter of fact, you can look up a lot of data on this as well. It's conjectural as well. And people say there's science behind it. Please don't say science to me, because the science to support everything. Science is but observation. So the ancient sciences know this more than anyone. The point about it is, if even if it exists in the way people say it does, it's still a symptom. The symptom is disconnect. So the cause is disconnection. And to understand my deep connection to this world means I don't have to worry about climate change, because I am, my actions are respectful, reverent, and responsible in my interaction with my planet. Now, First Nation people of my country, the Aborigines, would say that the Minjungal spur, which, is to our background, has sentience, has consciousness. Now, science is actually proving this at a level as well.
Yes.
So if I tune into that, I know when to go up there and when not to. And I do. I mean, if I drive my car, I'm saying a little prayer, tuning into the consciousness and the sentience of the path that I'm traveling, to be respectful and harmonic. And funnily enough, I don't have accidents and I don't hit animals.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching my daughters to do the same. And they see it. It's tangible. It's not some woo-woo shit. Technology. It's actually tangible. They can see it actually happening, and they can see it when we don't do it. Like the last kangaroo I hit, or was a wallaby that I hit, was because I was tired. I was driving at 4 o'clock in the morning and I didn't do it.
Yeah.
And Abby was in the car with me, and we had traveled like until 11 o'clock the night before, 16 hours coming down from Darwin, through dodging dead kangaroo carcasses because they've been hit by trucks. Cows that have been hit by trucks, just lots of deadfall on the road. So much wildlife moving around us, but completely safe through that. I wake up 4 o'clock the next morning, need to get Abby to the toilet because we just parked on the side of the road. I'm driving. I'm not really conscious. I'm not in. Go back to the point. I'm not in my body. And I didn't do my natural thing. Boom, wallaby comes under the thing. So I had to grieve the wallaby, and I had to learn the lesson that the wallaby came to. I've never hit another being. Yeah. So that wallaby was a gift to me to remember what I'm talking about. So respect, reverence, and responsibility. If I tune in, I'll realize when I'm meant to and not meant to do something.
Yes.
And then we let go of things like greed. We let go of opulence, and we realize abundance and affluence are not opulence, and they're not related to greed. They're balanced, they're harmonic. But I can only do that if I allow my heart space to open, because I actually have the courage to do that and hold that open in love, and therefore allow these energies to come in and allow this understanding to tap into the mind, because it's not the heart over the mind. It's the unification of the two, heart mind, which allows me to interact with my third dimensional, fifth dimensional, multidimensional reality.
Yes, absolutely. And I had that experience myself where when I'm going out to do any of the pruning or anything like that, I sit and I connect in energetically with it all and explain what I'm going to do, and just pull your energy back if you need to, all that sort of thing. And this one time I didn't. I know I was angry. Something had triggered me. And I went out to cut back the grass, and I had the weed eater, and I was going around with the weed eater, and I hit a wasp nest. And next minute they just rose up like this army. They were just sitting here looking at me like this. The next minute they were just attacking. I dropped the weed eater. That ran for another hour outside smoking away. And they were still bombarding that, but they just stung me. They were all over me, and I was running for the house trying to stop them, and oh god, it was all on, tell you. And I managed to get all of them off me before going inside, and then I had to go around and close all the windows and doors. They were just hunting me out, looking for me, hitting the windows, and oh my god, it was. And as I was racing around the house to close everything up, I could feel this poison, their sting just going through me. I could feel it moving through my body, and it was the weirdest thing. But in the recovery of that, because I was praying really that I wasn't going to die from it all, and I hadn't had too much in my body, but just started neutralizing it really. And then actually tuned in again and apologized, because I hadn't been connected. I wasn't connected. And I went out with such aggression that they also showed me how aggressive I was being in that native world and that nature. And that's not who I was every other day, you know. So that always reminded me to take my time, don't go in with the aggression, you know. If you've got that sort of stuff going on, deal with it first and then excuse me, go out and connect in there, you know. But
it's fascinating you raise that, especially because you come from Aotearoa. So the Maori are amazing people, but let's face it, the Maori have an incredible ability to tap into rage.
Yeah,
they're so powerful. But the thing is, what one forgets is that passion and anger are actually so close.
they are.
If you haven't walked through the anger gateway and lassoed and mastered your dragon of anger, you will not be able to get into the passion.
Yeah.
And that's why it will spiral down and cause fracture in society and everything. You can have all the mirage you want. You can, you can know your whakapapa and all that stuff. But the biggest thing that's been called, and especially your territory right now, your land is so immense and so powerful and so beautiful. And the biggest call for people is to own and master that dragon, and that will then cause a big pulse. And I see it coming from the aisle. It's like a massive pulse which goes out, and it's don't stuff with humanity.
Yeah.
Like, get away.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I'm speaking very, very clean language, because what's actually the energy that I'm feeling is not that at all.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
A big don't argue. It's a big all black don't argue, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
The land you reside on has that power, and the people with it. With it. Absolutely amazing.
It is, absolutely. And I see, Aotearoa as being the threshold for the rest of the world, because we're the first to see the light. It sort of comes through us first and then emanates out. And what I see is, when we walk onto a marae, there's that threshold that you go through where you're entering into the body of that marae, or the people, really. And that's how I sort of see New Zealand, as that place. So we are that threshold for the rest of the world. And it is it's an interesting thing. I've been really I don't know, there's something brewing within me connecting to all of that as well at this moment. It has been for a little while, and it was in April when my dad passed. He's the one that carries the Maori blood for us in our family. And so when he passed, there was something that was passed on to me. And I don't know what exactly that is right now, but I know that there's an unfolding. And it was interesting because about 4 years ago, I had my markings done in celebration of that. And then on the very same day, my oldest daughter actually went and had her shoulder and all that done with all this beautiful tāmoko. And it wasn't until later, there was an elder Maori man there who said that it was actually his son speaking. And he said that it wasn't until his father had got his markings that he actually was able to get his. And in that moment, it clicked with my daughter and me that I had gone first, and then she was followed in on that day and had her tāmokas done as well. So it was, without knowing what we were up to, it was all falling into perfect place. But yeah, there's a power here, definitely. And I know I've been privileged to be able to embody a lot of that. And at certain moments in time, it's been utilised through me into this land. And it's such a, I don't know, Going
back to, I'm just getting something coming through about, have you gone back to the land? Something about the answer to your question about what your father's passing down, the answer lies in the land.
Right. Of where he came from, like where we are from, basically. Yes, that's interesting, because we have all been, so it's basically Taranaki is where we originated from, but then they all moved down the island, and that's where our actual marae is down the island, but we've all been focusing in around Taranaki. And it's only just recently that it's really come forward where our actual marae is. And I was invited there, just running a workshop, and there was a woman that was at this workshop, and she and there were three women that had come up from that area, traveled an hour and a half to come to the workshop and do that, and they invited me down, asked me if I would go down and do some stuff down there, and it's where this marae is. So it's leading me, definitely. So that's happening soon. But yeah, that's my feeling too. Thank you for that.
The other question to you is, why the shift? There's always a reason for a shift, and a sense that can be an answer in understanding the reason from Taranaki to the marae.
Yes. Yeah.
And, one of the most beautiful things I ever done was I was gifted the opportunity to take some elders from the Kenya Dayak, who were like, they're the indigenous of Kalimantan, which is the largest island in Indonesia. It's the oldest rainforest in the world, 140 million years old.
Oh, wow.
That which is still untouched. But we took them back to their ancient burial sites. Now, I thought that meant a mound with a few crosses and stuff on it. How ignorant. We traveled 2 days up a flooding river to get to the side of a side bank, and then we traveled another day up into the mountains to get to their old locality of their town, and where the Kenyan Dayak was. And then we traveled the next day. We went down and further into the jungle, and there was this escarpment, limestone escarpment, that went from left to right as far as I could see. We went down in through the valley and then up, and they were burial caves 100 meters up on this limestone cliff, and all these sarcophaguses were just packed. And like they had been in this area for 3,000 years at least. 3,000 years is what they say.
Yeah.
And it was just incredibly fascinating to watch them go into an altered state of consciousness just being in the location. I went myself. And you talk about wasps. I'm standing on this edge of this cliff, no safety gear, no nothing. It's a 100-meter drop. There's all the sea of rainforest, and like all of a sudden, I'm just like every cell in my body is ecstatic, and I get covered by all these bees. And I thought, oh my God, if you sting, I am flying, you know. Yeah. I looked at them, and literally I turned black in the amount of bees that just covered. Wow. And they were native bees, they were stingless bees. And like they lasted on me for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes and stuff like this. And I'm having this avatar moment, I call it.
Yeah, a bit.
and then they left. And then I got to sit down, and I'm exhausted. Like I'm completely emotionally, spiritually just exhausted because of the intensity. And there's this photo I have with one of the Dayak, my best mate there called Raymond. And his eyes are like completely, he's seeing stuff I'm not seeing. And as they were, you know, there's fascination about, and it was that trip to take them back was whole multi-layered. There was so much to it that they had to connect to the land, because there were corporations trying to take the land over, and because they weren't back on the land, they were therefore claiming ownership. So, you know, there was that part to it, but it was so much deeper. And there was 8 hornbill. Yes. Hornbill for them are like the wedge-tailed eagle is for the Australian Indigenous here. It takes spirit, it's connection to spirit. For their connection to spirit is the hornbill. And at one stage, 8 hornbill flew over in this arrowhead, and like every Dayak started weeping. And like, I'm even like going, it's just intense. There's going back to source. It's like, even for, like, I'm pretty damn white, you know. If I take my shirt off, I become the Byron Bay Lighthouse. It's just like, it's who I am. But the thing is, going back to source is really, really important. All of us have been, all our clans have been violated, you know, and our role in this incarnation is to understand that violation and to heal it, to take ownership of it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I know I was in a Indigenous healing gathering that they had here a few years ago. There were the Yukon Indians came out, and some Aboriginal, there was all sorts of different ones there. But anyway, this was all done on a marae. And And, you know, there's a lot of protocol and you sit through a lot of speeches and talks and all the stuff. And this chief, who called himself the chief of this marae, who was very crippled. He had 2 walking sticks. He could barely walk. He was still very much in his boyhood, and this as an, you know, elderly man. And he got up and he just started running down white people. You know, it was like this real into this stuff, you know. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's so many different cultures here, different colors, you know, different everything. And yet we've come together as one on this big healing journey for this weekend, you know, long weekend. And I thought, this is just such an inappropriate conversation, and the way that he was just firing it out there. The whole time, spirit are pushing me to stand up, and I'm going, well, I'm not going to go and confront this man in front of everybody at this moment. Anyway, eventually my feet take off. That's what happens, is spirit are holding me and my feet start walking away from me, and I have to pull my body towards it and follow, you know. Anyway, that's what happened, and I ended up standing up in front of everyone speaking. But I just mentioned in that moment that how we'd all come here together to be one, you know, in this journey this weekend, and that every other culture and you know, that I might be this colour, yet I have my Māori heritage, and I also have Scottish heritage, which is also, they had their lands taken off them. They were, you know, in the same position as Māori. And so there were Aborigine there who had also had, and I said, you know, every culture has had this happen to them. And there's a part of us that has to come past that point into today and let the anger go and start working together from this moment for our children, for our future grandchildren and great-greats, you know. And oh my God, I got so many people going, yes, you know, and yes. And I was breathing like I was nervous to do it, but it was just, I just had to, I could not sit there any longer and listen to this stuff. And I thought, again, you know, the body of his body told me his mind, you know, I could see it in his body, how he thought. He was very crippled over, and, you know, but yeah, it's interesting.
The power of the woman elder, eh? That's an amazing story.
Yeah, it was interesting.
We need in my humble opinion, going back to Emergent Leaders Foundation, one of the biggest things we do is help, you know, families, individuals, or organizations change their narrative. Yes. And, you know, I live in a country which is so beautiful, yet so harsh. And you look at the dialect of the first people here, of course it's going to be harsh because the land reflects their language. Yes. And you take a first person away from their land and their first tongue, you sever them like completely. And that's what, you know, that's what the universe has done to so many people. It's taken them from their first tongue and from their first language. Well, it's not the cards you dealt, but it's what you choose to deal with them. And I don't care who you are. Yeah. Black, white, yellow, red, all the same, you know, and it's up to us what we want to do. Now, for Australia, we have such an incredible opportunity here to create a harmonic narrative moving forward, which means we've got to release shame and guilt. And that's both black and white person has to release shame and guilt. Yes. And because they can't form harmonic future. And looking into what unifies, not what divides. So there's so much richness to this narrative. I live just outside Byron Bay in the hinterland, and it's really powerful. Like, we're on the major song line between east and west, Monkey Mire in the west and Byron Bay in the east, and there's so much to it. I mean, Wollumben, you know, Aotearoa is the first place on the planet that sees the sun in the day. Well, Mount Warning or Wollumben is the first place that light touches in the mainland. It's just over there, and he because it's masculine. Wollumben means either one of two things: cloud catcher or chief warrior. And if you drive past on a clear day, you'll often see you've got an old grey hat just sitting on top, because he's a plug of the bigger volcano that was here, and a huge caldera, largest in the southern hemisphere. And but chief warrior too, because he's the place of spiritual constitution of of spiritual law for everyone in Australia, and there's lots going on underneath the radar, talking about, you know, how to interact, etc. But the big thing that I keep talking to people, and I don't mind who I talk to, you know, I'll call a black person to task if they talk about, we just need to get black people away out of country.
Yeah.
The country's not just occupied by black people.
No.
And, you know, if that was to be the case, then you would miss out on the richness of your universal journey so far. You would attempt to go back prior to the impact of all of this, which means you miss the opportunity to grow from the wound, to create something new.
Yes.
So, you know, a unifying narrative, like sporting clubs, getting a new unifying narrative together about something more than just the white rectangle. What goes on in the white rectangle? Yep, cool. That's super important, and why you exist to a point, but you're bigger than that. If you think you just exist because of the white rectangle, you're missing the point. What's your unifying harmonic narrative moving forward? And watch the thriving nature of it come back. You know, so, you know, you can go to a marae which is full of harmony. You can go to a marae which is not. And, you know, they're two maraes, but very, very different environments. Which one serves, which one doesn't.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure. And you know, the lines are very much like they're becoming very clear now, aren't they? You know, we're sort of, even though it's such chaotic mishmash of everything and crazy going on, there's definitely defining lines that are happening now where you can just see where things are getting pulled and movement. And it's an interesting time, and I am so happy to be here. Like, you know, we're learning so much, and it's such a just exciting time. Exciting. Thank you so much, James, for coming in and having this intimate conversation. It's been wonderful. And yeah, big-hearted man you are. Beautiful. And I love that you're assisting a lot of other males out there. Like I said at the beginning, it's like, I think there was a time there where men, you know, their role was definitely to lead and protect female and land and children. And men lost that role. They just lost that role. And I think now more than ever, it's time for them to really come back to that and, you know, allow the woman to stand beside them in that as well.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mandy. Thanks for everything you're doing as well.
Thank you. Take good care, and lots of love to you and your family.
Will do.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.